Hi guys, my name is Trevor Sullivan. I'm a solutions architect with StratusGrid. StratusGrid is an AWS premier consulting partner. Plus, we have a software as a service product called Stratosphere. You can visit us online at stratusgrid.com. Stratosphere is a cost optimization tool that helps you to locate cost savings opportunities across your entire private equity portfolio or your entire enterprise and all the child companies within your environment. With me today, I've got Matt Barlow. You want to introduce yourself, Matt?
Sure. Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, my name is Matt Barlow. I'm a cloud infrastructure lead at StratusGrid. I've been working with AWS for a long time, and I'm also an AWS ambassador. Really passionate about Gen AI capabilities and the new features that are being integrated into AWS.
Thanks, Matt. And as far as I know, you also have the machine learning specialty certification. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. And I imagine that was probably pretty hard to obtain.
It was definitely a change in focus for me because I've been mostly focused on infrastructure for the last several years. But so there's a lot of new terminology and new domain to learn, but it was definitely worth it and rewarding experience.
Great. Well, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that in a future video, but for today's video, we are going to be focused on the Amazon Bedrock service. And Matt, do you want to talk about just generally what Amazon Bedrock is and why do we care?
Absolutely. So Amazon Bedrock is it's a it exposes models that you can use for inference. So to kind of back up a little bit, like many people are familiar with GPT and Chat GPT, these are transformer models that enable you to send text, and the model can respond with with answers to your questions based on the prompts that you send in. And there's more and more functionality being developed in this area. It has a lot of implications for businesses. There's also a lot of work being done to enable LLMs to be agentic, where they can perform tasks on a user's behalf. And Bedrock is the AWS service that enables you to enable particular models and use them as part of your business development workflows.
Awesome. So yeah, Amazon Bedrock is basically a managed service that kind of encompasses these large language models, and you can send inference requests to them, send prompts to them, and get responses just like you do with ChatGPT. But then they also have the ability to customize these models, right? So they've got these base models that they call foundation models, like the Amazon Titan model or the Claude AI models. And then as a Amazon customer, AWS customer, you can actually train these models yourself, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's a great feature of it. And another advantage of running it within AWS is the private network connectivity. So if you want to ensure that a model is only accessible to people who are authenticated through your AWS accounts, then you can do that by starting with a custom trained model.
Great. Now, something that might intimidate users a little bit is all this jargon around things like neural networks, LLMs, transformer models. Do I need to be an expert at machine learning and have all this kind of specialized knowledge in order to leverage Amazon Bedrock? Or is it something that I, as kind of a somewhat experienced programmer, can still take advantage of?
I think even if you're not familiar with all the terminology, it's something that you can start integrating and taking advantage of right away. The more that you work with it, you may get more interested in connecting like data pipelines and things to Bedrock. But and we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the agents. But for the primary, there's plenty of primary use cases that you can use Bedrock for without really getting deep into any kind of machine learning terminology.
Okay. And in addition, you mentioned that there's prompts and responses to those prompts like ChatGPT, but is there also the ability to generate like images?
Yes, so there are models available in AWS for generating images.
Okay. Awesome. And what are some use cases that I might find generative AI to be useful in, whether it's image generation or prompts or these agents that you've been talking about? What are some like practical use cases in the industry that we might find these in use?
Oh, there's tons of them. I mean, the sky's really the limit, but some of the basic use cases that we can talk through are being able to have like a natural language interface for documentation that you may have, or all of the user manuals, that are available internally at your company. And then people are developing like chat interfaces for websites. They're using things like Bedrock to speed up the ability to provide support to customers. And also, there's a lot that you can do with marketing as well. And Bedrock can integrate with the personalized service, so that you can do things like develop custom messages based on a customer's order history, for different campaigns that you have. So there are really like a lot of business accelerating use cases.
Awesome. So, can you talk a little bit about the different foundation models that are available and when should I choose a certain foundation model? What's the difference between like Amazon Titan and Stable Diffusion, for example?
Sure. So differences are going to be, in terms of what kind of output they provide. So stable diffusion is an image generation model. The other models are going to kind of depend on your use case. Bedrock is taking an approach where they give you a lot of choice in terms of what model that you want to choose. So Titan is going to be good for like code generation in certain use cases. The Anthropic models, Claude, is going to be useful for kind of generic chat type interfaces. So AWS actually kind of outlines all the different models that they provide, and the best fit that they're for. And there's also new models coming out all the time. So like in the Claude 3 line, you have Sonnet, Haiku, and Opus. And as these new models come out, you may want to test them, with your applications before you decide to kind of promote them to a new model.
Okay, great. And Bedrock actually has a feature, I believe, called model evaluation. It's right in the console. And so if you're not really sure which model you want to select, should I use Titan or should I use Claude AI or should I use the Jurassic models? You can actually run through these model evaluations, take a look at the output, and then determine, which one is providing the most accurate as far as what I'm expecting uh, output, right?
Yeah, that's correct. The best way, a lot of this stuff is, since like the output from these foundation models are, it's not deterministic. So you're going to want to do a lot of testing to ensure that you get the prompts right in terms of prompting for the tone, and that it avoiding hallucinations and other kind of issues that you might encounter. You're going to want to do that kind of evaluation.
Okay. Well, why don't we get some hands-on time with Bedrock here and start by just taking a look at the playground interface. So I'm going to switch over to my screen here really quick, and we've got the Bedrock console right here in front of us. And one of the easiest ways to get started with Bedrock is to just go into the playground interface. This allows you to just kind of enter a prompt here. You can select which model you want to use and explore the output. And then if you want to generate images, you can actually go down to image here. You can select stable diffusion or the Titan image generator model. Both of those are supported for image outputs here. And you can plug in a prompt and then kind of see what's happening here. But before you actually go into the model playground and select a model, one of the first things that you'll want to do is go down to the model access. And also before that, you also want to make sure that you're in a supported region. Bedrock is only supported in certain regions, as you can see in this region selector here. So Northern California is not currently supported. There's a bunch of others that are not supported. So US West 2 Oregon and US East 1 North Virginia seem to be kind of the best supported locations for the time being. And there are certain features even within Bedrock, certain models that only exist in North Virginia. I just found that out the other day, in fact. Uh, and so you want to make sure that you're using a supported region. But in the model access here, you can see we've got access to a bunch of different categories from AI 21 Labs, from Amazon models, Anthropic, who makes the Claude AI models, Cohere, Meta, kind of Facebook models, the very popular Llama 3 model here, Mistral AI, and of course, Stable Diffusion as well. So what you want to do is go to Manage Model Access and then check off these models that you want to have access to, and then save the configuration here. And then that will grant access to those models in your AWS account. Now, I'm not really entirely sure, Matt, why they do this. If it's kind of a cost management thing, like why aren't these activated out of the box? Do you have any insight on that, or is it just kinda
I haven't received any information, for why you're required to go through the extra step to enable them.
okay. Yeah, I'm imagining it's just something related to cost management, so you don't start spinning up huge provisioned throughput. Because when you start provisioning throughput for these models, it can get pretty pricey. So, under playgrounds here, now that we've gone through the manage model access, if we just choose something like the very popular Stable Diffusion model, we could plug in a prompt like, image of glowing sword wielded by a knight. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. We have some options we can choose over here. We can plug in a reference image if we have something that kind of shows what we want the output to look like. We can use that as a reference and then it'll customize that. We also have the ability to customize the dimensions of the image. We can change some other things that kind of determine how much freedom the model has to kind of customize your image or how strict you want it to be. So that's actually kind of a neat image there. You know, that's something I could use as like game art. I could use that for a website to market a game or something of that nature. Or yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. And
That's
then
really
for
cool.
yeah, get a lot of nice output from Stable Diffusion. In fact, I have a Stable Diffusion instance running locally on one of my bare metal servers, and you just get some crazy good output. So from the text models here, I'm kind of a fan of Claude, so let's use the Claude Opus here, and then we'll just ask it a question like, what is the largest company in North America? And it looks like it's Apple. So we get that nice output very similar to ChatGPT where it's kind of streaming the tokens as they're being generated. So rather than having to wait until the entire output is generated, it's actually streaming the tokens kind of on demand. So that's a kind of a nice interface. It feels kind of natural rather than just pausing execution until the prompt is finished. So that's the text playground and the image playground. Those are just pretty basic ways to get your feet wet with this. Also, if you go up to custom models here, you can choose to do a fine tuning or continued pre-training here, and that allows you to customize the base foundation models that we talked about up here, or you can see them in model access. And then there's great documentation. If you do want to use one of these options, you have to provide input data in a couple of different formats. And the AWS documentation for Bedrock really kind of talks you through how to structure that data in S3 to customize your models. So, Matt, why don't you go ahead and switch context a little bit? Let's talk about the agents feature. So, what are agents for starters?
Absolutely. So agents were really like the kind of the next step for LLMs, and in terms of like how powerful they can be, because agents essentially allow the models to perform tasks and on your behalf. So since this is all automated, you can develop very complex agents. For like some people might have seen Devon recently as an example, like coding assistant, where you give it a problem and it will go out and like build an entire project for you in code, test it, and troubleshoot it. And so that's really what the agents excel at, is kind of like the multi-step um, processing of what you want to get done. So agents in Bedrock enable you to basically, so at like a very like kind of bare bones level, they enable the model to perform actions, and they can be used for things like augmenting prompts with additional information or actually making a post request to an API to cause a change somewhere. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of what agents are.
Awesome. So if I wanted to, for example, I could build a fully automated solution that manages infrastructure based on arbitrary prompts. So I could have an agent go out and delete a CloudFormation stack or create an S3 bucket for me or things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, really, like, there's no limit to what you could have the agent do as long as you can represent it in code.
So could I have it make me a cup of coffee in the morning if I have a Keurig?
I don't know. It's a nice challenge, I think.
If they had an API, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they do. So why don't you go ahead and show us a demo? I think you have a prepared demo of an agent, so I'm just gonna switch over to your screen so that our audience can see that, and then why don't you just step us through what this does?
Sure. So, yeah, let me go to the top level of this agent configuration. So basically, this is just a very simple agent. And to kind of understand how the agent works is you're going to provide it with, I'm going to go ahead and click on edit in the agent builder, but you're going to provide it with different action groups. And within the action groups, then you have different, you're telling it how to invoke I think of it as kind of like a tool, basically. So what's going to happen is when you make a request to the agent, um, the uh, the agent is going to have the context to understand that it has this tool available to it, and it's going to, if you make a request that the agent thinks, the model thinks like, well, to get that information, I could use this tool. Then it's going to invoke that Lambda function, receive the output, and it's going to take that into account when it's generating the response back to you. So this one, for an example, is I called it GitHub endpoints, and the Lambda function is very simple. All I'm doing is just hard coding all of the different GitHub API endpoints in here, and then I'm generating a response. So when you're creating agents, the response formatting is it has to be exact, because this is what the agent expects to receive, and if you miss like a key here, then it can cause the agent to fail. But yeah, we're responding back with the message, and to kind of give to show you like an example of it. So what we're doing is we're defining with function details. So you can either, there's two ways when you're, so Bedrock, the agents integrate with Lambda functions. There's two ways to basically give the agent context about what the function does. You can either define it with the function details, so you can basically tell the agent what parameters are available when calling the function, or you can use an open API spec file that gives a lot more rich information about like the response body and things like that. So what I'm doing here is basically telling the agent that it has this tool available, and this Lambda function is what needs to be invoked. In the Lambda function, you do have to have a permission set up that allows this agent to invoke it, and then I describe the actual functions that are available. So you can have multiple functions defined here. You can have up to 3 defined in an action group, so that the model can decide what function it needs to invoke in order to get the response that it needs.
Awesome.
So if I just kind of like demo this really quickly, I can say like,
What are the available GitHub endpoints?
right,
And so that's gonna
and
cause the agent to trigger the tool?
it should, yeah, because based on like the description here and the name of it, it should know that it needs to get this information from Lambda.
Nice. So it was able
Yeah,
to
so
respond with a custom output that you had actually embedded inside of a Lambda function, and that Lambda function could really do whatever you want, like communicate with a MySQL database or a MongoDB database or talk to some external API and then grab some dynamic data and return that back to the caller, right?
Yeah, that's right. So anything that you can kick off from a Lambda function, you can create, a tool from it. So it's pretty powerful when you think about the different things that could be done with this.
Awesome. And you mentioned setting up the permissions. One thing I wanted to point out, I'm just going to switch over to my screen here really quick. If you do want to build an agent, when you go over to the create agent wizard right here, let's just create one with a random name here. You have the option of going into the agent builder interface and let's just do a save here. Then we'll go into the agent builder. There's an interface to just quick create a Lambda function. And so what this will do is automatically set up all the permissions for you so that the Bedrock service can actually call out to that Lambda function and that the Lambda function has permission to execute and return that response back to the Bedrock service. So you can just use this integration here, and then you can actually go out to the Lambda service after you choose this option and customize the code inside of that Lambda function. So if it seems a little confusing as far as how to set it up, that's a great option to get started. Awesome. Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for the demo of the agents. Is there anything else that you wanted to share about how people should get started with Bedrock? Like, what should they look at first?
I think your demo of the playground was great. That's a really good way to kind of get a feel for it. But the just to start thinking about how it can help accelerate your business. Think about like what your initiatives are at the company right now. And there's probably going to be some good Bedrock use cases. There's also a lot of published use cases online. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would get started.
Okay. And what about the APIs? So, we took a look at the user interface in the AWS Management Console for Bedrock, and we saw how to use the playground. But really, the real power of this service comes in when you actually start integrating with your business applications, right? So, what are the
Mhm.
APIs that are available?
So there's yeah, so Bedrock can be accessed using the AWS SDKs, and there are also other client helpers. So things like LangChain, for example, has Bedrock support, and you can it's pretty much plug and play in terms of like other providers like OpenAI. You can just kind of substitute Chat Bedrock for the OpenAI provider, and you can LangChain is something that I use a lot for developing with the Bedrock API.
Okay, great. And there's also just some raw APIs if you want to send a prompt and get a response. There's a invoke, what's it called? Invoke model, I believe, endpoint that you
Mhm.
can connect to, whether it's a Python app, a PowerShell app, Rust application. There's SDKs for all these different programming languages from AWS that you can plug into. So I would encourage our viewers to check out the Amazon Web Services Bedrock API documentation because that'll show you the specific integration points to kind of build on top of. So, Matt, thanks so much for joining us for this chat and looking forward to seeing what other kind of interesting stuff you build.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Trevor. Really appreciate it.
And thanks to our audience for joining us. Take care.